been my pleasure a few times over this past year to be able to meet with Pastor Augustine, whose church, Amazing Grace Chapel, is located on the Beth Israel campus in what used to be our multi-purpose room. On Sundays, other points, it now comes alive with inspirational music and singing and prayer. And we welcome him this morning along with his wife, Buma. Despite COVID, we've had the pleasure of some of their members joining us at a couple of our social action events and hope that we can continue to grow that partnership. Pastor Augustine grew up in Nigeria before relocating here to the United States. He has a bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering, 2 master's degrees, and a postgraduate diploma in theology. We've learned, especially over the past several weeks, of the journey of Jacob's family who would become B'nai Yisrael, the children of Israel. Pastor Augustine will share with us his personal journey to the ministry, to America, and a bit about Amazing Grace. Following services this morning, we look forward to an additional period of time, 20 minutes or so, of more informal Kiddush conversations of questions and answers in our social hall with Pastor Augustine. For those that are joining us on Zoom, we will be broadcasting that from the social hall as well. So, Pastor Augustine, please.
Happy Shabbat, and thank you, Rabbi, for having me. Thank you, everybody, and those who are watching online. Thank you for joining in this morning. Like Rabbi said, we've had some interactions with the congregation here, and the perception is a people that are welcoming, people that are nice. We appreciate that. I'm Augustine, born and bred in Nigeria, in Africa. And I read mechanical engineering, like Rabbi had said in his introduction. Worked some secular jobs, while by the side I was pastoring. The ministry I belong to, that's allowed. We have some people who are into full-time ministry, and we have people who are part-timers. So part-time I work, and I also function as a minister of the gospel. Like Rabbi told us, I have a postgraduate diploma in theology. I have a master's in business administration when I was in Africa. I relocated to the United States some 10 years ago, and I also have a master's degree from Johns Hopkins University, the Carey Business School in information systems. I started out as what we call workers in church. Those are volunteers in a more contemporary term. And there I grew to become a minister and then a pastor. I'm also here with my wife, who also has a postgraduate diploma in theology and a master's in business administration. We'll talk more about my journey during the Kadesh. I hope I pronounced correctly. By the way, I enjoyed the service thoroughly. I enjoyed the music. That was awesome. And so let's quickly, because of our time, talk about some lessons from the life of Joseph. We'll try as much as possible to restrict to the 2 chapters we read from the Torah this morning. That's chapter 46 and 47. Don't mind the fact that I do not have the coat of many colors, like Joseph did. And I'm going to start with sharing a story with us, which is kind of a summary of the life of Joseph. And the truth is that almost all of us have some kind of experience that makes us relate with the story of Joseph. And no wonder for those of us from the Pentecostal family, there are so many messages that have been preached from these chapters of the Torah, chapter 37 up until maybe 49, 50. So many books have been written because it's something we can resonate with. And so yesterday night, I was going through my archives, and I just stumbled on this story. I didn't make much of it until this morning. And it was impressed upon me that this kind of resonates with the story of Joseph. It resonates with the experience that a whole lot of us. I see that the congregation here are adults, and there's a lot of experience behind us. And so we've seen a lot, if I may put it that way. It's the story of a man, and the title of the story, I call it, Is Your Tent on Fire? There is the story of this man who survived a shipwreck all by himself. So he was washed up on a small, uninhabited island. He prayed to God for rescue, and every day he scanned the horizon for help, but none seemed forthcoming. And so this man got exhausted after he had tried all he could, he had prayed, and so he managed to build a small tent out of the driftwood to protect himself from the elements and to store his few possessions. And so one day he went out to scavenge for food, and he was coming back. As he came back to the tent he had built, he saw the little tent in flames and the smoke rolling up to the sky. He thought in himself the worst had happened and he had lost everything. And he was in grief and anger. He was asking God, how could you do this to me? He cried. But early the next day, he was awakened to the sound of a ship that was approaching the island. The ship had come to rescue him. And when the ship came close, he asked his rescuers how they knew he was there. And they answered him, we saw your smoke signal. So what's the essence of this? It's easy for us to get discouraged when things are going bad, but we shouldn't lose heart because God is at work in our lives, even in the midst of pain and suffering. So we should remember, when next our little tent is burning to the ground, it may be a smoke signal that summons the grace of God. So like I said, we have experiences like Joseph did. This kind of resonates with the story of Joseph, like I said. He was born into a rich family, had an influential father who loved him, who made him a coat of many colors. So life was beautiful, life was nice, and the future looked bright. As a matter of fact, he had dreams of a greater tomorrow. But like we all have been reading in the past few weeks, things started going the downwards direction, just like this story of this man. But at the end of it, the dreams still came to pass. Joseph moved from the pit to Potiphar's house to the prison and eventually found himself in the palace. The story turned around at the end of the day. So I don't know what we might be going through. We are at the bend and things will turn around for good. And so let me just quickly pick, because I don't have so much time. I'm a stickler for time. I just want us to take some life applications of what we have been reading. Like I said, so many lessons to learn from the life of Joseph. But let's just pick a few from these few chapters, the chapters we read today in the Torah. And the first life application or lesson I would like to share with us is integrity. When we look at the story of Joseph, even in the Torah that we read today, he was a man of integrity. And I explained. Before now, the preceding chapters we've read, we read how Potiphar's wife came to Joseph repeatedly, making advances at him. Anybody would have thought that was an opportunity to at least a fairly better life. If you're in a relationship with a wife of the boss, that is going to come with some privileges. But that was not Joseph. As a matter of fact, look, how am I going to do this? And sin against God. Nobody would have known. And that's integrity. What do we do when nobody's seeing us? If we look at verses 33 and 34 of where we read today, chapter 46, Mr. Gardner, let me know when I have 3 more minutes. Just maybe a thumb up or something. It said in Genesis chapter 46, verse 33 and 34, it says, I'm going to read the English version. Maybe I will start taking some Hebrew lessons. I just love the way Hebrew sounds. And I'm not making that, I'm not saying that to make us happy. I just loved it. Hopefully one day I'll be able to make our time to learn. It says, and it shall come to pass, when Pharaoh shall call you and shall say, what is your occupation? That ye shall say, thy servant's trade had been about cattle from our youth even until now, both we and also our fathers, that ye may dwell in the land of Goshen. For every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians. Despite the fact that Joseph knew that the Egyptians didn't like shepherds. They didn't like people who rear cattle. We see here that Joseph was still upfront with Pharaoh. He didn't hide the fact that, look, this is the kind of people we are. This is our trade. This is what we do. The Rabbi was talking about our ancestors. Let me use the way he said it, because I'm also a Jew. You don't know that. It's another conversation for another day. For those of us in Pentecostal, we believe that we've been adopted into the family. I forgot to mention that we hold the Jews in high esteem because we believe the Jews are the family of God. They are God's people. But we have been adopted under the principle of adoption. So the point I'm trying to make is, it was upfront and it did not hide that fact. So that's integrity. That's one lesson I want all of us to take from these chapters that we've been reading, and particularly the one we read today. And like I tell people, everybody is looking for people of integrity. I came from the part of the world that integrity is a scarce commodity to some extent, especially our leaders. But as I often share with my wife, I share with people I relate with from where I came from, even the person that lacks integrity is looking for people of integrity. That's the irony of life. Those who have large businesses, some of those people who cut corners in their taxes, if they're looking for financial officers, if they're looking for people to run their businesses, they usually don't look for that kind of person who will run the business aground. They're looking for people of integrity. And that's one big lesson I want us to learn from Joseph and take and leave it out. Because on the long run, it pays off. In the immediate, just like we see in the life of Joseph, we may look stupid, we may pay for it. I mean, when he chose not to sleep with the boss's wife, he paid dearly for it. He had to go to prison. Sometimes we think that when we do the right things, good things will follow quickly. But fortunately, life is not fair. Life doesn't work like that. But the reality is, on the long run, in the short run, like Joseph, we may suffer for being people of integrity, but on the long run, it pays off. So let's take that with us. A quick lesson again, like I said, so many we can't share, but because of time, is the covenant of favor on God's people. The covenant of favor on God's people. That's another thing when we go to chapter 47 of the Torah, in Genesis 47 verse 6. It says, the land of Egypt is before thee. In the best of the land, make thy father and brethren to dwell. That was Pharaoh talking to Joseph. Who does that? If not for favor. Remember, as seeds of Abraham, in Genesis chapter 12, God had promised Abraham his blessings. He did not stop at that. In chapter 15, God made a covenant with Abraham. Now, he has moved from promise to a covenant. And being God's people, I don't have to tell us that God is a covenant-keeping God. And that's the only way we can explain that Pharaoh will see total strangers come to his country. And as we read in verse 6 of chapter 47, it says, in the best of the land, make thy father and brethren dwell. It's like people just coming from Israel. And Governor Hogan says, look, we're going to settle you in Potomac. We're not going to put you in Hoynesville. It can only be something that's based on God's covenant. And it's repeated when Israel was going to leave Egypt. Because we must live in that consciousness. We must take that from the lesson we're learning from the Torah this week, that as God's people, we have special covenant that God will not break if we will not break the covenant. And God is ready to move people in our interest. God is ready to move things in our interest. God is ready to influence policies in our interest. Like I said, that's the only way I can explain that people are coming into Egypt and Pharaoh is saying, look, even though you have not sown into this land, you have not even added any value, but we're going to give you the best. That's what verse 6 says. And like I said, that was repeated again when Israel was going to leave Egypt. In the book of Exodus, chapter 12, verse 35 and 36, it says, and the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed of the Egyptians jewels of silver, and jewels of gold and raiment. Verse 36, and the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required, and they spoiled the Egyptians. If I go to Mr. Gartner and say, I'm going back to Africa, can you borrow me all the balance in your 401k account? Can you give me the best of your dresses? Now, I'm not telling him I'm going on vacation. I'm going for good. This is what happened here. And yet, the Egyptians gave them the gold, silver, and the jewels. They knew they were going for good. And yet, the Torah makes us understand that the Egyptians gave it out. Still a product of the covenant, still a product of the promise that God had made to Israel. Prophet Isaiah talks about it in Isaiah chapter 60, verse 10. Isaiah chapter 60, verse 10. It says, and the sons of strangers shall build thy walls, and their kings shall minister unto thee. And that's exactly what Pharaoh did. Their kings shall minister unto thee. And we are still seeing it manifesting, even in contemporary times. I just hope and encourage and challenge the Beth Israel congregation to take advantage of the promise, to take advantage of the covenant. Look at the winners of the Nobel Prize. There's no group of people that has won it as much as the Jews. Is that correct? Oh, we do not know that. Let's research. The most powerful nation on earth is where we live. In the real sense of it, the people who are truly running the show are from a part of the world originally. Does anybody know? Oh, they're the Jews. So we see it in the life of Joseph, we see it prophesied in the book of Isaiah, and we see it happening. And so as individuals, we want to take advantage of the covenant that God has with his people. How many more minutes do I have? 2? 5? Nobody was keeping track. All right. So let me know when I bore you or when I start boring you. So another lesson we want to quickly learn, and I'll be faster now. I think I should be close to 15 minutes, if not already there. So I'll take just 3 more minutes. Is family, the importance of family. In part of where we read today, Genesis 47, verse 12. I will read it out to us again. And Joseph nourished his father and his brethren, and all his father's household with bread according to their families. What's the takeaway for us? As a congregation, we're a family. In Beth Israel, we should see ourselves as family. The world has been through a lot in the last 18 months thereabout. Let's watch out for each other. Joseph watched out for his people. Our last names might be different, but we should still see ourselves as a family. Let's reach out. Each one reach one. Can we do that? We don't know what people are facing. A lot of people are hurting. This pandemic has brought a lot of disruptions. People might come on Sabbath day for worship, and be smiling. But some people are facing battles inside. Let's be an encouragement to one another. The strong should support the weak. I'm still talking about the family. We would have conflicts in our nuclear family, as a congregation, but we need to learn to let go. Joseph had every reason to bear grudges with his family, with his brothers. We know the story. That's what we've been reading for weeks. They sold him. We know of the enmity. But Joseph let go. And that's why when they met him, they were stunned. They were shocked. They were speechless. Like Rabbi told us earlier today, it was a monologue because they couldn't believe it. They couldn't believe Joseph's reaction. We can learn from that. Our brothers who offend us, who step on each other's toes, but we need to learn to let go. Like I wrote here, bearing grudges is too much weight to carry. So let's drop it. And let me talk about the law of value and I get out of here. That's how Joseph got out of his affliction. The law of value. Joseph added value. Everywhere he was adding value. In Potiphar's house, he was adding value. It was so valuable that we understand that Potiphar was not second-guessing Joseph's decision. He wasn't standing right on his shoulder, monitoring what he was doing. He was dependable, and he was adding value. The same thing happened in the prison. He became the interpreter of dreams in the prison. And when he finally had a chance to meet Pharaoh, that was what brought him out of the prison. He added value. He did not just interpret Pharaoh's dreams, he proffered solution. And I hope we'll become such people. We're not going to be the one to criticize everything the committees are doing. We're not going to be the one that criticizes everything Rabbi is doing, but we'll be the ones that will proffer solution. We can do this. We can improve here. I saw this. Can we incorporate it? Oh, the school can be better if we do this. That's the way that's where my heads are. Can you consider that? Can we incorporate that? The law of value. And that helps us to even days outside of the Sabbath days, in our places of work, in our communities. Let's go out there and add value. I think I have to stop here. Let's just pray one prayer and I get out of here. We've prayed for peace and health. Maybe we should pray for one another, that everyone that's going through struggles, that an end will come, God will see them through and turn the table, turn the tide. One of the prophetic books we read this morning was talking about the valley of dry bones. That was also a story of turnaround. Dry bones became a mighty army. So let's pray, maybe while seated, anybody in the congregation, at home, here, that may be going through one struggles or the other, that help will arise. Let's just pray in 30 seconds.
In our tradition, Pastor, we say, Yasha Koach, which means may you be given the strength to continue to share, as you did with us this morning, spiritual and moral lessons based on our Torah portion. And I knew that we would always get along, but when you turned around and said you were a stickler for time, that sealed the deal in some ways. Although nobody can ever accuse me of speaking too long, because when I asked you how long you speak every Sunday morning, your answer was 45 to 50 minutes. So we'd be here till 1 or 2 o'clock every week. So we thank you very much. We hope that you'll share with us, Pastor, you'll share a little bit about the nature of your congregation, et cetera, and any questions that you may have as well. We continue the middle of page 184.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה ועל מה דברך חירותי והמליך מלכותי וחייכון ובימי חורף חיי לכל בית ישראל בעגלה בזמן קריב וימרו אמן
אמן.
יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם ועל מיה יתברך יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדה ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה